Welcome to our session on thinking through text, annotating our way to understanding. The act of annotating is a multisensory interaction with text, which makes a much stronger imprint on your mind. Therefore, when done correctly, annotating text can lead to deeper understanding and greater retention and processing of important information. Because of this, annotation can help in any subject. It's not just an English class skill, it's a reading skill, and reading happens in every course. In this session, we will look at the benefits of teaching annotation, as well as learn some ways to effectively teach this important skill to students. Let's take a look at our session goals. First, we want to define annotation. We want to understand the why behind teaching annotation skills. We also want to understand the kinds of things that we should be asking our students to annotate, as well as learn some possible ways to teach these annotation skills to our students. So what does the word annotation actually mean? Can you find the base word? Notation? A notation is a system of marks, signs, figures, or characters that are used to represent information. When we ask our students to annotate, we're asking them to use a system of marks and symbols to actually represent their own thinking in a text. Let's start with the why. Why should we ask our students to annotate? Well, research indicates that annotating text causes a more in-depth process of information, which results in greater recall of information. Annotations basically make remembering your thoughts much easier, and they also are a visual record of your thinking. The act of annotating is a physical interaction with the text, and because you're interacting with the text with both your hands and your eyes, the multisensory experience makes a much stronger imprint in your mind. And finally, annotation can help you in any subject. It's not just for English class. It is a reading skill, and in all of our courses, students are having to read, and in most cases, complex text. Now let's look at the do's and don'ts of teaching annotating. Do explicitly teach students how to annotate and why it's so important. Don't just give students a paper and tell them to annotate or highlight the text. Do allow students to create and use their own annotation symbols. As long as they can understand them, students need to understand that annotations are for their own benefit. Don't require unnecessary annotating, such as numbering each line or highlighting the title and crossing out the illustrations. Those are examples of test-taking routines. Do teach students to annotate while they read. And don't accept the excuse that I can't annotate while I read, or I need to read it first and then I'll go back and annotate. Annotations are their conversations with the text, and they should be happening while they're reading. Do teach students to refer back to their annotations and work smarter. Good annotations will save students time from having to reread large portions of the text. Don't make annotating into pointless busy work. Students must see the benefit. So, when should students actually annotate a text? Again, the annotations should occur while students read. Should symbols or just words be used to annotate text? Look, symbols and words should both be used to annotate a text, and preferably symbols that the students have helped or had some part in creating. There's basically two different ways we want students to engage with a text when they're annotating. We want students to engage with the text emotionally, in which they Annotate with symbols such as these in a way to engage with the text and respond to the text emotionally. We also want students to engage with the text in a more thoughtful manner. Thoughtful engagement includes writing in the margins, writing summaries and gist statements or questions, or discussing the literary elements and their effect on the reader. But what do you do with those really smart students who can just read and understand without all of the annotating? Well, that's a really great question, and I'll get to that answer. But before I do, let's take a look at an introduction to the book Neuroscience Synaptic Plasticity. The early phases of long-term potentiation, LTP, and long-term depression, LTD, are characterized by post-translational modification and trafficking of AMPA glutamate receptors, modifying reactivity of the postsynaptic membrane following an appropriate inducing stimulus. While this is an effective means of altering synaptic transmission in the short term, consolidation of these changes into late-phase synaptic plasticity requires a substantially deeper response, driven by novel transcription and translation of messenger RNA. Wow, that was a mouthful. So let's say some of those smart students want to become brain surgeons one day. This is the type of text they will encounter. Well, let's take a look at another type of text that some of those same students may encounter. So not everyone is going to be a brain surgeon. Maybe they want to be an NFL player. Let's take a look at one section of an NFL player contract. Player hereby assigns the NFLPA and its licensing affiliates, if any, the exclusive right to use and to grant to persons, firms, or corporations, collectively licensees, the right to use his name, signature, facsimile, voice, picture, photograph, likeness, and or biographical information, collectively image, in group licensing programs. Group licensing programs are defined as those licensing programs in which a license utilizes a total of 6 or more NFL players, images on or in conjunction with products, including but not limited to trading cards, clothing, video games, computer games, collectibles, internet sites, fantasy games, etc., that are sold at retail or used as promotional or premium items. Okay, so maybe your students don't want to be brain surgeons or NFL players. Maybe they just want to own a home someday. Let's take a look at one of the first paragraphs of a home loan agreement. To secure to lender, A, the repayment of the indebtedness evidenced by the note, with interest thereon, the payment of all other sums with interest thereon, advanced in accordance herewith to protect the security of this mortgage, and the performance of the covenants and agreements of borrower herein contained, and B, the repayment of any future advances with interest thereon made to borrower by lender pursuant to paragraph 21 hereof, herein, future advances, borrower does hereby mortgage, grant, and convey to lender with power of sale the following described property located in the county of Dallas, state of Texas. Wow, all three of those were some very complex texts. So what do you do with those really smart students who can just read and understand without annotating? Well, you let them know that everyone is eventually going to encounter a challenging text, and they're going to need the skills that you're teaching them now to help them analyze and understand those complex texts, like in the 3 examples I showed you. So when it comes to teaching your students why they should annotate a text, you definitely want to start with some of the examples like the ones that I've shown you. And also get the students to tell you why they think it's important to actually annotate a text. Once students have come up with their list of why they should annotate a text, then it's time to actually start practicing. So you can hand out a copy of some annotation codes similar to the one that you have here on the screen. We're going to have the students read and annotate the text and using the annotation code. So they need practice doing that. But before we do any of that, we want to make sure that as a teacher, you have modeled the use of these codes. The best thing you can do as a teacher to show your students the importance of annotation, as well as show them how they should actually annotate, is to model in front of them. Students need to see you using your annotation skills through a think aloud. Watch as I annotate this paragraph in front of you. In the past year, 30% of U.S. high school students have stolen from a store, and 64% have cheated on a test, according to a new large-scale survey suggesting that Americans are too apathetic about ethical standards. Wow, this is pretty tragic. 30% of students have stolen, and 64% have cheated on a test. Now, this survey seems to suggest that we are apathetic. I see that word, I think it is related to the word apathy. And I've heard that when we were talking about voter apathy during the elections, and about how people weren't really caring or are not involved enough in the voting process. So here it's kind of saying that we aren't as involved or we don't care as much about our ethical standards. And again, ethical comes from the word ethics. I gotta admit, I kind of agree with this one, so I'm gonna put my plus sign here. Just look at all the stuff that we have on TV. It's just pure garbage. Once, as a teacher, I'm finished with my think aloud, I can have students practice annotating the rest of the text, or a small portion of the text, and then have them share their annotations with a small group. A slightly different way I can introduce annotations to my students is to first share a sample annotations code page like the one on the previous screen. I can then have students review those annotation codes or research other codes that they might like to see online. I can then have students create their own sets of annotation codes to be used in the lesson's annotation. Once students have created their own annotation symbol system, then I can give them a short article and have them read the article and annotate that article using their own created system of annotations. Once done, we can have them exchange papers with the partner and reread the article while reviewing their partner's annotations and symbols. We can have students discuss things such as, does their partner's annotations actually help them understand the article any better? Do they understand what's meant by each of their partner's annotation symbols? And then finally, they can wrap it up with a discussion on how annotating a text actually can help them as readers. By asking them things such as, what did you get out of writing annotations? Was there anything that you learned about the text that you didn't see before? Or how might this make you better readers? That's the ultimate goal of annotating in the first place, to increase student comprehension. Now that we've defined annotation, know why we should teach annotation skills to our students, and learn what types of things our students should be annotating for, and also previewed some ways to teach those annotation skills, I hope you can see the value in teaching your students all about annotating as soon as possible, early in the school year. If you would like more information on annotating text or teaching your students how to annotate text, feel free to contact me using the information on the screen. Thanks for joining me for this brief session on thinking through text, annotating our way to understanding.